Revelations Concerning the Communist Trial in Cologne. By Karl Marx. 1853. 1. Preliminaries. On May 10, 1851, Nath Jung was arrested in Leipzig, and Burgers, Roser, Daniels, Becker and the others were arrested shortly after. The arrested men appeared before the Court of Assizes in Cologne on October 4, 1852 on a charge of treasonable conspiracy against the Prussian state. Thus the preliminary detention, in solitary confinement, had lasted a year and a half. When Nath Jung and Burgers were arrested, the police discovered copies of the Manifesto of the Communist Party, the rules of the Communist League, a communist propaganda society, 2 addresses of the central authority of this league, as well as a number of addresses and other publications. A week after Nath Jung's arrest had become public knowledge, there were house searches and arrests in Cologne. So if there had still been something to discover, it would certainly have disappeared by then. And in fact the haul yielded only a few irrelevant letters. A year and a half later, when the accused finally appeared before the jury, the bona fide material in the possession of the prosecution had not been augmented by a single document. Nevertheless, as we are assured by the public prosecutor's office, represented by von Seckendorf, and said, all government departments of the Prussian state had undertaken the most strenuous and many-sided activity. What then had they been doing? New variants. The unusually long period of pre-trial detention was explained in the most ingenious way. At first it was claimed that the Saxon government refused to extradite Burgers and Nath Jung to Prussia. The court in Cologne appealed in vain to the ministry in Berlin, which appealed in vain to the authorities in Saxony. The Saxon authorities, however, relented. Burgers and Nath Jung were handed over. By October 1851 enough progress had been made at last for the files to be presented to the indictment board of the Cologne Court of Appeal. The board ruled that there was no factual evidence of an indictable offense, and the investigation must therefore start again from the beginning. Meanwhile, the zeal of the courts had been kindled by a recently approved disciplinary law which enabled the Prussian government to dismiss any official of the judiciary who incurred its displeasure. Accordingly, the case was dismissed on this occasion because there was no evidence of an indictable offense. At the following quarterly session of the Assizes it had to be postponed because there was too much evidence. The mass of documents was said to be so huge that the prosecutor was unable to digest it. Gradually he did digest it. The bill of indictment was presented to the prisoners and the action was due to be heard on July 28. But in the meantime the great driving wheel of the government's case, Chief of Police Schultz, fell ill. The accused had to sit in jail for another 3 months awaiting an improvement in Schultz's health. Fortunately Schultz died, the public became impatient and the government had to bring up the curtain. Throughout this whole period the police authorities in Cologne, the police headquarters in Berlin and the ministries of justice and of the interior had continually intervened in the investigations, just as Stieber, their worthy representative, was to intervene later on as witness in the public court proceedings in Cologne. The government succeeded in assembling a jury that is quite unprecedented in the annals of the Rhine province. In addition to members of the upper bourgeoisie, Herstadt, Leyden, Joest, there were city patricians, von Bianca, Wimrath, country squires, Habling von Lanzeler, Freiherr, i.e., Baron, von Furstenberg, etc., 2 Prussian government officials, one of them a royal chamberlain, von Munch-Bellinghausen, and finally a Prussian professor, Grosler. Thus in this jury every one of the ruling classes in Germany was represented, and only these classes were represented. With this jury the Prussian government, it seems, could stop beating about the bush and make the case into a political trial pure and simple. The documents seized from Nath Jung, Burgers and the others and admitted by them to be genuine did not indeed prove the existence of a plot. In fact, they did not prove the existence of any action provided for in the Code Penal. But they showed conclusively the hostility of the accused to the existing government and the existing social order. However, what the intelligence of the legislators had failed to achieve might well be made good by the conscience of the jury. Was it not a stratagem of the accused that they should have conducted their hostile activities directed against the existing social order in such a way that they did not violate any article of the code? Does a disease cease to be infectious because it is not listed in the police medical register? If the Prussian government had restricted itself to using the material actually available to prove the harmfulness of the accused, and if the jury had confined itself to rendering them harmless by its verdict of guilty, who could censure either government or jury? Who indeed but the foolish dreamer who imagines that the Prussian government and the ruling classes in Prussia are strong enough to give even their opponents a free rein as long as they confine themselves to discussion and propaganda? However, the Prussian government had deprived itself of the opportunity of using this broad highway of political trials. Owing to the unusual delay in bringing the case before the court, the ministry's direct intervention in the proceedings, the mysterious hints about unheard-of horrors, the rhodomontade about a conspiracy ensnaring the whole of Europe, and, finally, the signally brutal treatment of the prisoners, the trial was swollen into a précis monstre. The eyes of the European press were upon it, and the curiosity and suspicions of the public were fully aroused. The Prussian government had put itself in a position in which for decency's sake the prosecution was simply obliged to produce evidence and the jury to demand it. The jury itself had to face another jury, the jury of public opinion. To rectify its first blunder, the government was forced into a second one. The police, who acted as examining magistrates during the preliminary investigation, had to appear as witnesses during the trial. By the side of the ordinary public prosecutor the government had to put an extraordinary one, beside the public prosecutor's office the police, beside Asset and Seckendorf a Stieber together with his Wermuth, his Griffengrief and his little Goldheim. It was inevitable that yet another government department should intervene in court and, by virtue of the miraculous powers of the police, should continuously supply the facts whose shadows the legal prosecution had pursued in vain. The court was so thoroughly aware of the position that with the most laudable resignation the president, the judge and the prosecutor abandoned their functions to Stieber the police superintendent and the witness and continually disappeared behind him. Before we proceed to elucidate these revelations made by the police, revelations which form the basis of the indictable offense that the indictment board was unable to discover, one more preliminary observation remains to be made. It became evident from the papers seized from the accused, as well as from their own statements, that a German communist society had existed with a central authority originally based in London. On September 15, 1850, the central authority split. The majority, referred to in the indictment as the Marx Party, moved the seat of the central authority to Cologne. The minority, which was later expelled from the League by the group in Cologne, established itself as an independent central authority in London and founded a separate league. Footnote 265. The reference here is to the Willich-Schapper group, which Marx and Engels called the Sonderbund, perhaps in allusion to the separatist union of the 7 economically backward Catholic cantons of Switzerland formed in the 1840s to resist progressive bourgeois reforms. This sectarian adventurist group split away from the Communist League after September 15, 1850, and formed an independent organization with its own central authority. In view of the factionalists' refusal to abide by the decision to transfer the central authority to Cologne and because of their disorganizing activities, on November 11, 1850 the London district proposed to the Cologne central authority to expel the members of the Sonderbund from the League. See present edition, Volume 10, page 633. The central authority endorsed the proposal and gave notification of this in its address of December 1. By their activities the members of the Willich-Schapper group helped the Prussian police to discover the League's illegal communities in Germany and frame a case in Cologne in 1852 against prominent members of the League. End of footnote 265. In London and on the continent, the indictment refers to this minority and its supporters as the Willich-Schapper Party. Said Seckendorf claimed that the split in the London Central Authority had its origin solely in personal disagreements. Long before said Seckendorf the chivalrous Willich had spread the most vicious rumors among the London émigrés about the causes of the split and had found in Herr Arnold Ruge, that fifth wheel on the state coach of European central democracy, and in others of the same sort, people who were willing to act as channels leading to the German and American press. The Democrats realized that they could gain an easy victory over the Communists by making the chivalrous Willich the impromptu representative of the Communists. The chivalrous Willich for his part realized that the Marx Party could not reveal the causes of the split without betraying the existence of a secret society in Germany and in particular exposing the central authority in Cologne to the paternal attention of the Prussian police. This situation no longer obtains, and so we may cite a few passages from the minutes of the last session of the London Central Authority, dated September 15, 1850. In support of his motion calling for separation, Marx said inter alia the following, which is given here verbatim. The point of view of the minority is dogmatic instead of critical, idealistic instead of materialistic. They regard not the real conditions but a mere effort of will as the driving force of the revolution. Whereas we say to the workers, you will have to go through 15, 20, 50 years of civil wars and national struggles not only to bring about a change in society but also to change yourselves, and prepare yourselves for the exercise of political power. You say on the contrary, either we seize power at once, or else we might as well just take to our beds. Whereas we are at pains to show the German workers in particular how rudimentary the development of the German proletariat is, you appeal to the patriotic feelings and the class prejudice of the German artisans, flattering them in the grossest way possible, and this is a more popular method, of course. Just as the word people has been given an aura of sanctity by the Democrats, so you have done the same for the word proletariat. Like the Democrats you substitute the catchword of revolution for revolutionary development, etc., etc. Herr Schapper's verbatim reply was as follows. I have voiced the opinion attacked here because I am in general an enthusiast in this matter. The question at issue is whether we ourselves chop off a few heads right at the start or whether it is our own heads that will fall. Schapper even promised to lose his own head in a year. That is on September 15, 1851, in France the workers will come to power and thereby we in Germany too. Were this not the case I would indeed take to my bed, in that event I would be able to enjoy a different material position. If we come to power we can take such measures as are necessary to ensure the rule of the proletariat. I am a fanatical supporter of this view but the central authority favors the very opposite, etc., etc. It is obvious that it was not for personal reasons that the central authority was divided. But it would be just as wrong to speak of a difference of principle. The Schapper-Willich party have never laid claim to the dignity of having their own ideas. Their own contribution is the peculiar misunderstanding of other people's ideas which they set up as dogmas and, reducing these to a phrase, they imagine to have made them their own. It would be no less incorrect to agree with the prosecution in describing the Willich-Schapper party as the party of action, unless by action one understands indolence concealed behind beerhouse bluster, simulated conspiracies and meaningless pseudo-alliances. End of Chapter 1.